Anthea decided that their baby daughter, Kayla, might calm down substantially if she was exposed to other babies of her own age in daycare. After a few days' research to find a good daycare service, they bundled up their little Kayla and brought her to the daycare for an interview and personal inspection. When it came time to sign a contract to put little Kayla in a daycare center for half a day, Anthea explained to the manager of the daycare center that Kayla had a congenital birth defect that precluded physical or mental maturation beyond the age of 9 months. The same source that had given them new identities had provided, for a substantial sum, a 4-inch thick folder of absolutely bulletproof and incontrovertible, fictitious medical records of the infant Kayla's congenital medical problems that had been inserted into the legitimate medical records of a well-respected, but harried pediatrician in their former city of residence. Anthea had learned her lessons well from her mother. The cover-up was complete. She had even obtained enough evidence on the theft-prone medical clerk with a drug habit who had doctored the medical records as well as the bribe-inclined county clerk to ensure that she could blackmail them into silence as necessary. Baby Kayla's birth records were from another state, in which fictitious midwife records and diddling of the county records produced a new child on the books. Anthea's foolishness meddling was erased from the records and replaced by a well-funded change of records mediated with a healthy dose of bribes in the right places. Documentation that Anthea's first child, Kayla, had been married to a wanted felon by a county judge in West Texas who had since died was contrived and documented before insertion into the county records. The felon in question hadn't been seen in years and the skeleton of a victim with his dentition had been discovered about 6 months after the fictitious marriage took place. The sheriff had concluded that the suspect had died in a drug deal that went wrong. It wasn't difficult to insert reports into the police records of the country sheriff's office that the sheriff suspected that the con's former wife had changed her name and was either supporting herself by prostitution in another jurisdiction, or had died under another name. The scenario was all too familiar to be disbelieved. There were no witnesses, only accomplices who could easily be blackmailed with evidence on hand for other, more heinous crimes. The investigating deputy sheriff had died of a heart attack and couldn't be questioned. If Anthea had been committing a crime other than conspiracy to alter and fabricate public records, the crime would have been perfect. The documentation and cover story were airtight. Since Anthea hadn't committed a crime other than falsification and altering of records, she could easily claim she had done so to protect her family from the press. While she had caused a minor violation of the law to occur, she hadn't done it for personal gain or profit. No jury in Texas, where the falsifications were done, would convict a woman on the grounds of protecting her husband and baby girl. Anthea had defenses in depth. Since an opening for little Kayla wasn't available that day, the manager promised to call the couple after reviewing their credit history and Kayla's medical records to see if they could accept and handle baby Kayla's particular needs. After looking at the records, the manager of the daycare licked her lips in anticipation of signing the baby girl up for full daycare services. The falsified credit history of the couple was spotless and the valid current bank accounts and stocks gave her no reason to believe that they would ever be short of funds to pay their monthly bill. The young couple were fabulously wealthy, no doubt from a dual inheritance from even wealthier parents. Once the daycare manager reviewed the medical records and saw that the healthy, but developmentally stunted infant in question was a permanent candidate for infant daycare services, she forgot her worries and did her utmost to bind the parents of the unfortunate infant into a 10-year, non-revocable, prepaid contract. The daycare manager briefed her people thoroughly before baby Kayla arrived for the first day. There would be no questions nor interrogations of the wealthy parents of the poor, unfortunate baby. She explained that the little baby had a congenital developmental problem which was incurable. The parents of the baby wanted her socialized as much as possible, but had no expectations other than making her the happiest infant in the daycare center. The manager agreed wholeheartedly with the parents' expectations and demanded that her staff do likewise. Aside from making the baby girl as happy and serene as possible while in their care, they would accept her developmental limitations. No one was ever suspicious of why the helpless little baby girl in the daycare center never got any older. All was understood as the daycare workers assumed full responsibility for the repeatedly wet and messy-bottomed infant who was given into their care early each weekday morning and picked up from the daycare late in the afternoon. Every weekday evening, at 5 o'clock promptly, both parents would pick up their baby and take her home for the night. It took time for the psyche of Anthea to completely adjust to her new position in life. Although she was in a rejuvenated body, the same couldn't be said of her psyche. At first, the always-moving Barbie mobile drove her almost insane with rage at its obvious jape of her helpless, dependent condition, but after a few months at the daycare center playing with dollies, peeing and pooping her didies as well as being fed with formula from a baby bottle and being breastfed at night, her resistance began to break down. The meaning that she had formerly attached to the mobile, i.e., the symbolism of her loss of adult control of her life, began to fade into the background as she began to view the lavishly dressed overhanging doll and its expensive accoutrements as mere toys to be viewed with infantine girlish pleasure.